Oh my goodness, it's happening.
Look at
All
that.
right. Hey, welcome to the modern world. All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and happy Friday if you happen to be with us here now. If not, just pretend it's Friday wherever and whenever you are. We are very lucky tonight. We are here with Sheryl J. Anderson, showrunner, novelist, all around. I was going to quote Frasier, all around raconteur. But I'm always quoting Frasier too much. And Joe Keenan called me and was like, "Could you please stop before we sue you?" I was like, all right, let me move past this. But anyway, welcome. Like you couldn't be in a friendlier place. We're really big fans. If it wasn't for Charmed references, I never would have gotten anywhere dating for many years. So thank you. Really needed that. The fact that you could casually drop Charmed references was really great thing to do. So could appreciate you more. And now you have done something that I do not know anyone in my personal life who has done. You are on season 4 of a Netflix show. How,
Woo! Congrats.
how in the
Thank
world are you
Congratulations.
you.
so good that you get 4 seasons on Netflix?
I'm lucky and blessed and excited. And I know we're not the only ones, but I know we're still a rare breed. So I'm very, very thankful that we get to keep going.
I've only ever done single seasons, and I fantasize openly about being able to return to a show for multiple seasons and not be a vagabond. And so it's just like when I hear that, I'm just like, wow, that sounds amazing. How long do your rooms run?
Between 16 and 18 weeks for
Oh,
10 episodes.
oh wow, that's great. And how many writers do you have? Just curious.
This season I have six. We were five the first three seasons. We
Yeah.
are um we are a lean budget
Yeah. Understand.
production. So yes, small but mighty, as I like to say.
It's TV. It comes down to the people, right? So,
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we have the best, not just in the room, but our cast, our crew, everybody associated with this show has been absolutely delightful. And I know how fortunate we are that that's the case.
have you dreaded a day at work in the last 5 years?
There was a day when it got really, really cold in Atlanta, and I did not have the right clothes.
Yeah.
But my DP, who's from Vancouver, gave me his Storm Tech jacket, and I made it through.
That's awesome. I
That's teamwork right there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
so when you're running the room, like do you go into that job with a philosophy? Do you let the job speak to you? Do you adapt to the people that you've got and the personnel gone? Like how do you run a room?
Um, I I run a room as collaboratively as I possibly can. I like my big thing at the beginning of a season is that everybody needs to understand. I want them to feel safe, heard, and respected. And if they ever don't feel one of those, then they need to let me know immediately. We run our set the same way. But my other philosophy is we work too hard not to have a good time.
There you go. Yeah, it shows up, right? I mean, you can tell the difference between a happy writing staff, a happy crew, a happy cast. It seems to me, anyway, there's like a certain delight that oozes through that just makes you want to be part of the experience.
Well, and I do think that that's the case, and I'm very glad that, particularly because, as I often say, we're a community making a show about community,
mm,
that we want that feeling to pervade everything we do, even those scenes where we're really just trying to crush your heart. We want you to know that we're crushing your heart with love. But we take it very seriously. We're a show about hope. We're a show about sticking up for each other.
mm.
And I feel like first of all, I feel like we need to live that way, period. But if we're not living that way in the room and then on set, then it's going to show.
Shows like that and messages like that just feel like good medicine at the moment, but not the kind that you avoid, like the kind that you relish in. You know what I mean? Like the warm thing that you let wash over you in this moment, because I feel like so many of our connections and so many of our norms have been challenged and broken, that it's nice to visit a place where you can feel a, you know, community again. It's kind of, you know, I don't know. I always think of TV as a rallying point for us, you know, for our like national self-esteem in so many ways, you know. So
Well, and I think part of why the show has clicked with people is because we dropped in the early days of the lockdown, and we've been progressing as fascinating things continue to happen in the universe. And so I appreciate the opportunity. I'm sort of flummoxed by the notion that it's bold and different, but I appreciate the opportunity to stand up and say, we should be good to each other and we should help each other forward.
yeah. So you hired a staff probably a few times. When you were out there looking for people, a lot of our, you know, a lot of people listening right now are pre WGA. They're looking for, you know, insights on how to break in and everything. And it's just you as a showrunner, what made people stand out to you? Like when you were wading through the 212 scripts that you probably had to wade through, and the, you know, the 94 meetings and everything, like what stood out, made you say, hey, I'm in?
What I look for in a writing sample is memorable characters in emotionally dynamic situations.
There you go.
And I separate my reading into yes, maybe, and no. And 24 hours later, I go back and I check on the maybes and I pick up the script. And if I don't remember what it was about, it goes in the no.
Wow.
And if I remember, it goes in the yes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for, particularly because we're a family drama, as much as we are any other. We have some kind of overlapping genres, but I'm looking for this show for writers who can handle genuine, deep emotion without being snarky or treacly or overly earnest about it, and who aren't mocking the genre.
The big middle, like not taking it apart and not like living in it so much that it drones and becomes like your enemy. But yeah, I feel like so much of life is in the middle, but we're usually pushed to right to different extremes or different sides, and it's like I don't know. I don't know how. I'd love to get your opinion of this. I feel like we're headed toward a space where we re-embrace 70s, 80s, 90s episodic television, you know, like that we live in a time where, you know, characters will evolve and big arcs will happen, but we'll have individual episodes that can stand alone and we get to live there for a long time and stuff like that. What do you
Oh,
think?
I thought you were talking about a return to ad-supported television.
Oh, well, I think we're going there either way, right?
That too.
So look, either what's happened in the industry of television is either one of the craziest cosmic accidents of all time or the most devious plan of all time. You know, like deconstruct this, move it over here, turn it back into that.
I think the latter scenario is giving certain people way too much credit.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I assumed, but you know, you never know. I was always a fan of that Saturday Night Live where Reagan was a big genius behind the things and like wasn't subtle or anything at all. It was just like sharp on everything. And it's like, so plus the holidays are coming and I have to hear relatives say things like four-dimensional chess soon. So I'm
How lovely for you.
I'm girding myself.
Oh no.
But I can take it. I can take it. So so you look for things that stick with you. You look for stuff that like sticks to the bone. I got to imagine that comes more like I can't imagine that comes from some dramatic beat or this or that. It's got to come from feelings. Like you're looking for something.
Well, but I mean, it comes from a dramatic beat if it's well executed. It comes from a beautifully drawn character. I often think of William Faulkner talking about when he first started thinking about The Sound and Fury, that he had the image of the little girl climbing over the fence, and that entire book sprang from that. There are scripts that I read all the way back when I was staffing season 1, where I remember the episode I watched in my head. I remember a character walking down a long street by herself. I remember 2 characters sitting down across the table from each other. So it's images, it's emotion, but it's also beautifully structured so that the reason that image stays with me is because that was a moment where everything came together and was beautifully orchestrated, and then everything spun back off.
That's awesome.
I have a question, Jeff.
Sure.
I have a question for Sheryl. So Sheryl, so like, because I'm just what is happening with Sweet Magnolias is just amazing. You know, this show that just catapulted did anything change between season 1 and season 2 to, like, you know, your approach, because it just became so, you know, the audience just really embraced it?
I don't feel like we've changed our approach at all since day 1. I think what we did was take advantage in season 2 of the fact that the audience knew these people. And so we could push them further and trust the audience to come with us. But our approach has been the same since day 1, which is to tell stories rooted in friendship and the redemption that true friendship offers.
Awesome. And I do have a quick question, because we're trying to get the audiences as much as possible. Tony asked, is showing all your cards as a writer a plus or disadvantage when pitching for a specific genre?
Wow, that's a complex question. And in an effort to answer it simply in the moment, I will say you got to hold something back because you got to keep them leaning in. So pitching is just telling a great story that happens to be the main emotional through line of your series. So no, you don't want to put all your cards on the table, because if they think they know the whole story up front, my experience has been that they get bogged down in that rather than just telling them a great story and having them want to know more.
Do you follow a character thread when you're pitching? You'll pick one and run through the whole thing, and you'll adorn it with other people along the way, or you'll go back and pick it up later?
No, I do tend to follow a protagonist. Even in an ensemble show. There's usually somebody who's slightly ahead of the rest of the ensemble. So it's telling, frankly, usually her story, and then introducing people as necessary in telling the story for pitch purposes.
A lot of people, we've dealt with a lot of people lately, done a lot of little pitching seminars and stuff like that, and people asking things, and it's like a lot of people tend to tell the story as opposed to talking about the story, you know. And it was like, for me, my approach was always, I'm talking to somebody who I'm trying to convince to watch something, but it's okay to have spoilers. You know what I mean? Like,
I think pitching is walking out of a movie and calling your best friend and going, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry you're not going to be able to see this, so let me tell you." But it's about, there's this guy, there's this gal, there's this quest, there's this problem, there's this romance, there's this bomb, and that's all the same movie. You know, you want to follow the emotionally propulsive path, which tends to be your protagonist's line. But if it's just scene, they don't have enough foundation to appreciate it. So it has to be feeling, obstacle, overcoming, more feeling, oh, then there's him, and more feeling, and you just got to keep going.
That's awesome. Are you a memorizer? Are you an extemporaneous person?
Pre-pandemic.
Yes. Before we had our, you know.
Pre-pandemic, I was a memorizer.
Wow. That's amazing.
To the torment of my children, because I would stomp around the house going, and then shoot. But I have to admit, I have embraced the beauty of pitching over Zoom and pretending I've memorized, but
Yes.
having my document minimized in the lower corner so that I can glance down if I need to.
Yeah, I think we've all gotten weak. I dread the day that they're like, come on in and give us the pitch. I'm like, like, what do you mean there?
Do you think that day's coming?
No. Do you?
No. I think
Yeah.
it's so much more efficient for them.
Yes.
And I pity Arrowhead Water because certainly their sales have dropped terribly. But
Yeah.
I think it's more efficient for them. They know it's easier for us. And there was always that anguish of driving across town for an hour and a half to do a 45-minute pitch. And then by the time you get in the car and go home, it's 2 hours.
Yes. I live in the valley and it would be like Sony at 4:30. Like, why? Do they hate me? Like, it's like, like what would happen?
I live on the west side, and I asked my manager, at what point in my career can I say no to 4 o'clock on Friday in Burbank?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you're there. So I would feel completely free if that ever comes up.
I appreciate that.
Moved a meeting for like, I think maybe the first time in 25 years, like where I was like, oh God, I just like not a Zoom or something, but like an actual, like, like a meaningful one. And it was like,
Right.
I just thought, well, maybe this is it, like maybe that's the end. So, yeah, you never know. Was there ever a moment where you were like, oh, I made it? You know what I mean? Like,
Not yet.
yeah, exactly. And it wouldn't, a lot of people are always ask about that. And they're like, how do you know? Or how do you this? And like, it's like, I don't think anybody believes that they're ever in any kind of stable enough place to say to themselves, I made it,
Well, and let me suggest that if you think you made it, then you have begun to work against yourself.
Yes.
Complacency is the enemy of good work.
What's the friend? What's the well that you dig into? Do you know?
I love what I do, and that's usually well enough. And certainly once I've got a story up on its feet, then those are people I want to hang out with. And then beyond that, I always have a list in my head of people I will hire if this show goes.
Right.
And the promise of working with those people again or for the first time is another wellspring.
How much do you draw from life? Like nobody is listening right now. How much do you how much do you draw from life,
You know the New Yorker cartoon where the parents are standing in front of the novelist as she's at the book signing and saying, if we'd realized you were really going to be a writer, we would have treated you better. I mean, that's not a comment about my parents. I love my parents. But I draw on my own life all the time. Yeah. Steal from myself because I'm not going to get mad at myself for it. And I believe that a good dose of revenge leads to great characters and good stories.
Do you ever find yourself portraying sympathetic versions of people you would like to lash out against sometimes in these things? Like I find myself.
Have you watched my show?
You know what I mean?
I'm sorry.
So there we go. I find myself rooting for them sometimes. Like I want to fix them on the page in a way that you could never
absolutely, because they were unfixable in life.
Yeah.
And I know they're not watching, but it gives me great satisfaction to show a version of who they could have been to the world. Yeah. But it's also sort of satisfying to me because what I usually do is I take somebody and I remove the things that went wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's reassuring to say, oh, see, that was a good person.
Right.
So I wasn't a complete idiot to be her friend for a time or to be romantically involved with him for a time. There was something good there. And then there are just the pure wish fulfillment characters, the people I'm still waiting to meet.
Yes, I always loved that. I read an Elvis Costello interview once, and he was like, my second album came up, and I wrote this huge batch of songs, and it came out, and they were all people from my imagination, and like by 6 months later, I knew them all. And it was like exactly that. I think you do manifest those things in. Did you grow up reading the books, like in like the writer books, the Hollywood books, the industry kind of things? Were you ever?
Not really, because I grew up intending to be a playwright. And so I was just reading a lot of plays. And it wasn't until I was out of college, and some friends of mine had come out here, and they were like, weather's better, money's better, come on out. So I started reading once I got out here. But I also, my first job was with a production company. And I just read scripts all day, and that was the best education ever.
Yeah, 100%. How out of those scripts that you read, how many of them were you like, whoa, this is amazing? Like I find it very low. I'm like a 10% guy. We're all agreed on something to be like, oh.
Well, I was gonna say 10, but I wanted to, think is 9 going to be more impactful, because 10 is sort of the, go-to. But yeah, 9 or 10%.
And by the way, a lot of people write in and they're like, what's it like to be in a room with a really good showrunner? And that's what it's like. You throw out 10. They're like, well, 9. 9's the one. You know what I mean? It's like, that's how you know you've got a good one. You know what I mean? I love it. I felt like I was I was flashed back to this morning. It was beautiful.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Anyway. I have a question. We have a question in the audience from Ken. Dan Harmon says that feature characters arc, series characters return to the same state. Your characters stay themselves yet evolve over time. How do you think about and balance those opposing forces?
Okay. So could you read the quote again? I missed.
Sure. Dan Harmon says that feature characters arc, series characters return to the same state. Your character.
I would like to point out that Mr. Harmon writes half hour. Half hour resets. Hour doesn't reset.
Yeah.
People grow and change and evolve. So I just wanted to clarify that part. And then what was the question attached to it?
And then says, how do you think about and balance those opposing forces?
So I'm just going to say an hour, that doesn't apply, because we're to Mr. Harmon's diagram, we'd be on the feature side. People are arcing. It's just a very low, complicated arc. It's not an arc, it's a roller coaster. I tell our actors all the time, be suspicious when you're really, really happy, because we make you really, really happy so we can pull the rug out from under you, because then your fall is greater and the emotion attached to it is greater. So the way that we handle arcing people out is, particularly at this point, we know these people really well. It's always about what they want. Mm-hmm. And as human beings, what we want changes. People get older, people fall in and out of relationships, people change their professions. So what they want changes, but you're always helping the character chase what they want most. And then making it difficult. Obstacle.
That's and you never get to live too long in the wonderful. You platform, you get yourself up there, and then we live at a time right now where there's a bunch of different types of TV. Like Diane Harmon will have his version, and it's like, and now there's all this talk about like, well, the auteur TV version of like movie people coming over and invading TV. I mean, you strike me as a TV writer's room, regular TV, like we would define 1 hour TV writer's room, multiple directors, episodes, showrunner. Like you strike me as that person,
And that It's because that's what I am.
Yes.
I mean, I actually started in half hour, but I was more interested in characters that grow and evolve. So I moved into hour, but I've been doing hour for a long time. And it's kind of how I think now.
Yeah.
Occasionally a friend will ask me for help with breaking a movie or something. And I'm like, wait, 2 hours. I can do this. I can do this. But yes, I came up through episodic and still love being there.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying I love episodic. I'm very,
Yeah.
very happy in episodic. I don't feel a need to reinvent something that has worked beautifully for a very long time.
I that's why I feel like there's just a pleasure zone of the world right now that we want to go back and live in those places. We want to revisit people that we, get to spend time with for years. It's like you're in that zone where you're doing it right now. You know what I mean? So it's amazing. Like I just think you were 4 years ahead of everybody else who now is realizing, like, wait a minute, what a world to be in, I mean, I miss those days. I miss those shows. Like I think about stuff like the original Magnum PI or Remington Steele or stuff like that a lot. And it's like those were fun worlds to go be a part of and to live in. And you could drop in and out. And I did a revisit of Cheers. Like I'm a huge Frasier addict. So to methadone myself off of Frasier, I've been watching Cheers for like the last 2 years, and it's just that I've really just switched addictions now. But it's like, to be able to return to that place and that consistent, that sort of consistent vibe and all that stuff. It's like, I really think that's just what people want now is comfort.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we dropped season one, Heather Headley called me and she said, I believe we are a balm for this particular Gilead.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot. And it's, there are always the people who find comfort or shielding through cynicism and detachment. And I have never been one of those people. I revel in emotion. And I'm delighted to have found a team, not just on the show, but at Netflix, that loves that as much as I do.
Yeah, that is you. Yes, I don't want to. No hubris. I don't want to. Never mind. I don't want to. It's like, hey, isn't the weather great? I've never had a car accident. Like I will not say what I was going to say.
Well, let me perhaps say it for you. I've been on plenty of shows where none of that applies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope, yes, I hope it's a blast that everybody's having a fun time. Like, that's awesome. I mean, how long would you like to go? I mean, would you just want to go until you were told no?
Sure.
So,
because I've been doing episodic TV long enough to know at some point somebody's going to tell me no.
right.
But
right.
I mean, I'd rather not guess when that no is coming and just enjoy it fully until it comes.
That's I used to try to tell myself that as the holidays approached. I just have one weird one because in Talking, it's very like your understanding of character and the machinations of character and everything is just so clear. You know what I mean? It's like, isn't it difficult and weird to have regular human relationships sometimes when you understand, like when you feel like the behind the scenes machinations of it? Like, do you find drama accidentally when you don't want to?
I'm glad you're asking if I find it rather than cultivating it.
Of course.
I had to learn pretty early on that just because I came up with a great line in an emotionally difficult situation, I didn't have to say it.
Yes.
So I do find like my kids are teaching me D&D. And by kids, they're in their 20s. And I find it very, very difficult because I'm trying to extrapolate the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out which one of them is lying to me. And they're like, Mom, just play the game. I'm like, but no, there are two reasons you want me to go into that tavern. And so, yeah, I'm better at shutting it off sometimes than others.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because I always have this fear. I always think of Apocalypse Now, when Martin Sheen at the beginning of the movie is like in Hanoi in the hotel, and he's staring at the wall and he's like, every day I'm here, I'm getting weaker, and they're squatting in the bush getting stronger. It's like, oh no, it's like, you had to work 2 hours on Sunday. It's like, oh God, I better. Have you seen the line at the bus station of incoming writers? So yeah.
But here, let me flip it for you for a minute. These, these little gremlins in the back of our heads. I have also found over time, when I'm having difficulty in a real life relationship, I step back and I say, how would I write her as a character? What are her traumas? What are her joys? What's her backstory? What are her triggers? And why is this scene playing out this way? And it actually helps me de-escalate situations sometimes, and has helped me be compassionate with people longer than I might have otherwise.
Wow. Wow, you're so much better than me. It's like, yeah.
Maybe I've just been through more.
Well, I love your ability. I love spinning it to the good. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, someday, something to aspire to. For me, and I don't want to keep it too long, sorry, but
Jeff, I can talk all night, so just
go. Now I just picture the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene with the shot 98.
But we do.
What's up, Marcia?
Go ahead. We have a couple questions from the audience. Okay.
I was just gonna say one.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I insist.
Oh, well, because Ken was along that line. He's asking the question for going back to character for a protagonist. How do you show them having negative impulses like anger and sensitivity and keep them sympathetic? And then also for an antagonist, if anything, do you do to humanize them?
So to the first question, it's a matter of scale. I mean, heroes are absolutely entitled to be angry. I mean, who doesn't cheer when Indy just gives up and shoots the guy in the marketplace?
Spoilers.
And I think that it's just a matter of at the point where we would find anger unattractive in a friend, it's unattractive in a protagonist. But also, I think that the key to writing antagonists is to remember that they're the protagonist of their story.
Right.
They see themselves as the hero. They think they're doing everything for the right reason and for a just reward. And so if you don't write them as a villain, but you write them as a hero in opposition to the hero you've chosen, then that forces you to keep human to human rather than slightly elevated human to deeply elevated villain.
Thank you.
Wow, I know. I'm like, wow. Sheryl goes deep. And then 2 more questions are just on terms of more let's see, process. Going backwards a little bit. Dan asked, what's one story you feel like you still need to tell and why? And any advice convincing an author to a shopping agreement versus buying their rights of their book?
Funny question for an author.
I know.
I can't select a story that I have yet to tell because I have a list. I have a lot of stories I want to tell. Part of them being IP I want to adapt, but also things that I've come up with without IP that I want to write. And I'm not trying to be evasive. One just doesn't rise to the top at the moment as being more important than another. I tend to write about hope and redemption, and I particularly tend to write about women trying to do the right thing in difficult circumstances. So I've got many variations on that theme. In terms of persuading somebody to do a shopping agreement rather than a full-on option, I think it's about how you bond with the author and how savvy the author is about the business. Because I'm in the midst of doing a shopping agreement right now, and she knows how the business works. She knows that I'm busy, and a shopping agreement just makes more sense for both of us than something where we get into, well, how much money do you want? Well, I don't have that much money. So does that mean we're not going to do this? We're coming at this more as hopefully future colleagues. So let's just see how we can help each other.
Awesome.
That
Thank you. And then
coach, like we're partners in this. Like let
exactly.
me material
Exactly. Yeah.
and introduce. Yeah. Yeah.
And then one more quick question from Tony. She met Janine Garofalo at a comedy club last week and told her about my show. I've written with her in mind, and she allowed me to drop off my script at her manager's office in New York. What do I do now?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Definitely don't stare at the phone. You know?
I mean, you've done what you can. You've written a great script, and it's up to her and her team to decide whether it's a great script for her.
Nice. Yep. And
so just leave it, basically.
A lot could be undone by doing otherwise.
I will say with a tremendous amount of affection, my to be read pile moves slower than any element on earth. And the people who I know have me set on their calendar because they check in with me that regularly aren't helping the pile get any shorter and aren't endearing themselves to me.
Yep. When you agree to read something for somebody and you are going to take the time to do it, you're not making an instant commitment or setting a time that you're going to have a fast turnaround or do this or that. You'll get to it as soon as you have time and be as helpful as you possibly can.
And I always say that up front. I say, I have no idea when I'll be able to read this, but if you want to send it to me, I'll do what I can.
Yep. It's funny because we've all been on the other side.
Absolutely.
We all understand. And I think we all want to try and, I feel an obligation for all of us to reach a hand back and do our very best. But at the same time, it's like, the amount that a single person can do and the amount of control that any individual actually has is really pretty. People think showrunners are gods, but it's like, not real, yeah.
Well, I was going to say that's a mistake, but also here's the thing. Most of us who are willing to say, yes, I'll read your script are also teaching and mentoring and watching over writers groups. It's not like, oh my gosh, you're the only one who's ever asked me and I have a free Saturday afternoon. So sure. I mean, I will always let friends of long standing cut the line, but everybody else, it's as I got it. And I'm embarrassed to say I got some old scripts in that pile.
Nice. Your Deadpool 2 is going to be amazing. Like, oh my God, here it is. This is great. Yeah. Oh, that's not a story for not a story for the year. Another time. So I just have a couple of things I just wanted to ask you on our way, out the door, just because. First off, you'd mentioned about your theme and the theme in your writing and everything, which I think is great. How deep into your career were you when you realized you had a theme? You know what I mean? Or did you always know? I guess coming maybe playwright, you kind of knew early?
No, because I was so young and green when I was a playwright. It was kind of all over the place. Because I had I did have plays about family, but I also had this, deep gothic streak where, it was murder and mystery and magic and, all of that. Genuinely, a friend pointed it out to me.
Oh, wow.
At a friend on a show, and he was like, "Why do you always write about this?" And I was like, "I do." Oh, I do. Okay. And, frankly, part of the hope and redemption thing is I'm Lutheran, and that's a big deal for me in my faith. So it's a big deal for me in my art. But I was doing it without realizing it. And then Peter pointed it out, and I thought, maybe I should lean into this a little harder.
Aren't you glad you weren't a Calvinist? Who knows who it would have become? So, thank goodness.
And I apologize for laughing to all the Calvinists in the audience, both of them.
Yes, exactly. Actually, we have a pretty hardcore subset. So the algorithm tells you a lot of things, in your stuff.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's Paul Schrader and just like anybody else that I could think of.
I was going to say, I'm with you there.
Yeah, that's about it. And so the other thing I wanted to ask you was, when we got into lockdown and everybody was having such a funky time and everything, and was thinking about work, I just come off of a show and was sort of sitting at home, and it was like, okay, like, what'll be next, and obviously like the world was getting weird. And in that moment, it's sort of like not like some weird crisis or whatever, but just having a moment of like, what is it that I love about this stuff? I just sort of went back and revisited Singing in the Rain and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Casablanca, and this movie Sing Street. I don't know if you've ever seen this great 2000. It's like I just went back to sort of the ones that that like got me there, like emotionally, and that I cared about and made me want to do it. And I was just curious if you've ever had a moment where you needed to sort of like tap back into the original source, and like what are some of those original sources that sort of got you where you were? Like Billy Wilder was like by God, like that was my that I just was raised in like a cult of Billy Wilder,
I will say, I think my top three movies have always been, I mean, since I was a kid and my parents introduced me to them, Laura,
yeah,
and Philadelphia Story,
oh yeah,
and A Man for All Seasons.
All right, three movies I know hugely well. I love A Man for All Seasons. I just think I wish if there was two, I would love to see that kind of stuff come back. And I really miss the docudramas of the 60s and 70s, the hardcore docudramas, Advise and Consent, and the best, all that kind of stuff, But like the that sort of specific biopic, and especially those sort of topics, just always got me. And Lara is just, Lara.
Perfection.
Yeah, it's so fun,
The theme song is my ringtone.
Oh, that's amazing. I just always love the dialogue, especially McPherson. There's that stuff where it's like, have you ever known a woman who wasn't a doll or a dame? And he's like, there was a lady in Washington Heights who got a fox fur out of me one time. And it was like, so,
Congratulations on what promises to be a disgustingly earthy relationship.
I would find myself most put out if the neighbor's children were dragged away by wolves. It's just like all that stuff. Oh man, Waldo Lydecker. And it was just such a kick because I saw Twin Peaks as a kid before I saw Lara. So seeing that afterwards and all the crossover, the names and everything was just so fun. Anyway, yeah, I really love that movie. And I wouldn't say a thing about it to people about the plot because you want to see it.
No, you got to go see it. You got to go see it.
Yeah. And anyway, and the last thing, but just Dana Andrews with that little game, that little baseball game that he's like, it's like, why do you do that? It annoys me. It's like, calms me,
Yep.
And it's just like,
Yep.
oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, they just don't. I thought Otto Preminger was sort of maybe a little, one of the really kind of looked over, from like where we sit now, like not a brand name that people would remember in any way, shape, or form, but just an interesting stuff.
Absolutely. But again, I mean, that's a story without giving anything away about hope, which took me years to understand.
That's funny. But Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean.
Okay.
So,
But also I was raised by two noir fans. So,
um,
I love the whole genre. And then Philadelphia Story to me is the height of romantic comedy.
all I ever think about with Philadelphia Story is just that moment of Cary Grant where he's like, and like, yeah, and finally just like it's like, oh, it's so shocking to see, Uh, yeah, it's funny because now old movies are Raiders, you know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I think, for me, old movies is Casablanca and The Thin Man, and it's like
Oh,
right.
absolutely. Oh, I have the box set of The Thin Man. Nick and Nora have deeply influenced my writing over the years.
Yes, there's a banter that in the DNA that is very obvious and like very,
Happy Pata.
yes, and it's like it's not true. He didn't shoot me anywhere near my tabloids or whatever. It's just like, there's just so many great, and I love the, especially the first two and how they're linked together with Christmas and New Year's, like basically back to back and everything. I'm so scared about a remake. I so don't want it. It's like
I I'm just I'm just going to count on the fact that things develop slowly.
yes, yes, if at all,
Yes. But
yes.
I also will say, much as I love John Hughes, his version of Miracle on 34th Street is not allowed in my house.
Yeah. The only like the only kind of updated thing, I really like the George C. Scott Christmas Carol that was from the 80s that was on TV. I don't know if you
Okay, okay. So Christmas Carol is a whole different thing because what you have to do is you have to get the whole timeline and work your way through it, Christmas to Christmas. I say, as the sister of a man who does this, and we do it together.
yeah,
Because
fantastic.
then you can change it up and examine, or like, because I like the Albert Finney musical version.
Yep.
But you can compare all the different, and Michael Caine and the Muppets. I
Yeah,
think that's different because that's redressing an archetype,
right.
not remaking one classic film.
I think it's the 1934 Edmund O'Brien, or I don't know if he's the 51. That's Alistair Scott. But in the 34, there is a Tiny Tim who's so over the top and office, yeah, you're so giddy that you're just like, oh man, I can't wait for Tiny Tim to get it. Like this is the one Tim that's asking for it. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we devolved in the holiday, but I'm a big fan. I don't. Have you ever seen Remember the Night? Preston Sturgis wrote it. Mitchell Leeson directed it. It's Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck. It's so like I can't believe nobody's ever
And
remade
they're
it.
not trying to kill each other? Or are
Not this time. This is the
okay.
time when they get along.
Okay.
She's still got a honey of an anklet though, but it's just it's a different context. But yeah, it's a really good. He's a DA and she's a jewel thief, and he's putting her. It's Christmas Eve and he's prosecuting her, and he's got to leave to drive home to Indiana, and he has the case held over until New Year's. And he feels bad because she's going to be stuck in jail. So he pays for her to be bailed out. And she shows up at his place thinking that means that she wants it, that he wants her to sort of, come by and hang out for the holidays. And anyway, it just, they end up on a car trip back to Indiana because that's where she's from too. And it's very, very nice.
My
So
brother thanks you. That will be part of our Christmas Film Festival this year.
it's a worthy one, I promise. So anyway, listen, I really love and respect what you're doing, and I think that you must go at it. It feels like you're going at it like right from the heart, which is the only place to do it. I just really love that, and I'm just glad you're out there just keeping. I hope you run 17 of them if you want, and if not, you're back into adapting a mystery show and go make us a great, like, the new Sexy or Murder She Wrote. You know what I mean?
There
Or
we
something.
go. I like
Um,
the sound of that.
Oh, me too. I love mystery novels. I saw you do it's like Max Allan Collins was my favorite as a kid. Like he did this Nathan Heller series that's like historical detective fiction, like fictional detective real life cases, and I got so lost in those. They're just so wonderful, and I love the Mosleys and the Agatha Christie's, and it was just like I've never had a train trip in my life without an Agatha Christie book on me. It's just like it's the only way to go. So yeah, so I'm just so jealous. Like I don't know how you find the time to go have a side, have your other career.
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh no, my novels were a long time ago.
Oh, you're not gonna no? Oh,
But
okay.
now you sound like my book agent. We were like a week into the strike, and he was like, "Does this mean I finally get another book?"
Right.
So no, I'm not saying I never will. I'm just saying I'm not writing novels at the same time I'm running a show. I'm barely eating breakfast at the same time I'm running a show. So the novels can wait for the next hiatus.
One time, I knew a friend who was directing a movie at the time and was just tweeting a lot. And I was like, boy, what's up with that? Like, how can you possibly have the time for that? And then I said, anyway,
And Jeff, one more last question from
yes,
Yvonne. After all these years in shows, Sheryl, do you still get stuck? And if so, do you have a process to get unstuck?
why would you say that to somebody? That's cruel.
Um, yes, and my process for getting unstuck is to go to the grocery store.
Oh,
Would you buy?
Dinner for that night. Genuinely, it's about getting up and moving. Sometimes it's doing the dishes, sometimes it's going to the grocery store. In the room, fortunately, there are other people who can keep the ball moving down the field while you're like, oh, something doesn't feel right. Hang on, hang on. Oh, now I'm there. And I think, I don't mean to be glib, but TV doesn't allow for writer's block because TV is all about the clock. But if I'm between seasons and writing something for myself and I get stuck, I learned too late that sitting there in front of the laptop and trying to will the next scene into existence was the worst thing that I could do. So I get up and go to the grocery store. And while I'm in the grocery store, I usually go, oh, well, the body's just hidden in the wrong place. And if we move where the body is, then everything else flows better.
And they all say, oh, she's back. That lady in the frozen aisle.
Exactly. The deli man says, sorry, miss, I can't help you with that.
Right. Yeah. Don't get near the sharp objects, please. I go to Gelston so often when I need to blow off steam and wander around and do something that I'm no longer allowed. Like my wife is like resentful of the amount of money I spend at Gelston. So I'm like, so I can't go anymore. Like it's like, look, if you want to think, go think at Ralph's. And I'm like,
I was going to say, I just go to Vaughn's and pick up dinner. So that keeps me under control.
Yeah. Oh, well, I you got to have some constraints. Otherwise, you just roam too free and you can't really get anything done. Anyway, listen, we really appreciate you being here. This has been a real treat.
I so appreciate the invitation. You guys are wonderful.
Oh, Sheryl, I adore you. Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back sometime. There's more to learn. You know what I
mean? Just let me know. I'm never more than a Zoom away.
Well, that's really wonderful. We really, really appreciate it. So anyway, like, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Friday night.
I'm going back to a script. So thank you both. Thank you everybody who might be out there. And this was such a pleasure. Really honored to be